The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, says it will begin mass metering of electricity consumers across the country from the 1st of May this year. Abimbola Banjo, the Director for Power and Utilities at PWC Nigeria, now joins me to discuss the impact this move will have on the country's power sector. Abimbola, glad to have you on the show this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
So you see the smile on my face. Is it time now for power consumers in Nigeria to beat the drums and dance to music on the streets?
Absolutely, I will say a resounding yes. I think that the new regulation with respect to metering in Nigeria is going to a large extent help with the metering gap that we've suffered hitherto. Yes, effective May 1, a lot of meters will be rolled out to a lot of customers very quickly. Currently, there's a metering gap of about 4.7 million households that don't have meters, and the regulator wants this gap to be covered very quickly in the next 3 years. So what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of meters provided to a lot of customers relatively quickly.
When I see figures and I hear 4.7 million deficit and metering, I'm thinking from the consumer perspective, from stories that I hear, from experiences that I have been a part of. How realistic is this? When in real life, when you line up like 10 Nigerians, 7 of them have unimpressive stories to tell you about their metering system. Is it now, by virtue of this NERC timeline, time to bid estimated billings goodbye for real?
Yes, I mean, I think so. I think what has changed from what we had before in the past is that now the responsibility for metering no longer rests with the distribution companies directly. So now you have a new industry participant called the meter asset provider. And the meter asset providers are basically the NERC participants who are charged with the responsibility of providing meters to customers over the next few years. They're going to be awarded licenses for 15 years. So you can be rest assured that for the next 10 to 15 years, the people who are charged, whose competence is around providing the meters and providing the finance responsible for providing these meters will do their jobs. I think it's going to be a change from what we've experienced in the past. I'm quite upbeat about that.
I want to key into your faith, but I've got more questions for you. So now, under the new regime, under the meter assets provider, I hear they have 10 days between when the consumer pays for the meter, applies for use of the meter, and when you get it installed. 10 days.
Absolutely.
How realistic is that based on current realities? How achievable is that?
I think it's very realistic. I think it's very achievable. I think that. You see, I think one of the issues that we've had in the past is the discos or the distribution companies had too much to chew at in very little time. So what the regulators have very smartly done is to break up the responsibilities of the distribution companies.
Is that sufficient change, given the reality that the experience before was people paying and not even being on the list to get meters? 1 year, 2 years, no meter yet.
I think that's a massive change. And I think that the KPIs of the meter asset providers is hinged on things like this. So there's certain KPIs that have been set for the meter asset providers as well as for the discos. And one of their key KPIs is the ability to comply with things like ensuring that after a customer makes this payment for a meter, he's metered in exactly 10 working days. So what the MAPs need to do is internally, they need to set up their internal processes to ensure that they're able to deliver on the set KPIs.
Now, this timeline has been tagged by some analysts and industry watchers as breaking the disco's monopoly. Are they so much of bad boys, quote unquote, the discos?
I mean, I don't know about breaking the disco's monopoly because first of all, you have 11 discos serving different geographies, and in those geographies, you have what do you call the right to provide power in those geographies. So the discos are basically split by geography. Now, one of the issues that a lot of industry participants will tell you is that the discos have performed suboptimal. It's something you hear all the time. In terms of breaking monopoly, I would say that you've reduced some of the workload that the discos have had to take on and deliver on. I think right now with the introduction of new participants what you're doing is more of helping the discos in areas where they've typically struggled. Because remember, we talked about 4.7 million meters deficit, right? That's in naira terms, that's about 200 billion naira in funding. That's a lot of money to cough out at once to provide metering. And if you think about the fact that the discos have already hitherto complained about the cost-reflective nature of the tariff, i.e. the tariffs, the current tariff structure as it isn't cost-reflective, then it now begins to beg the question, are they adequately equipped to be able to provide the required funding, to be able to provide the required amount of metering that is required by the electricity sector? So I think in this case, I think what the government has done is smart, because now what you have is a case where the new players have to worry about how to get their own funding to provide the meters on behalf of the discos to ensure that that the customers or the users of electricity are measured based on the amount of power they actually use.
So you get to see some of the internal workings within the power space, the dynamics that play out that the layman and the outsiders cannot see by virtue of the nature of your job and your interactions. To what extent do you think that the frosty relationship, if I could describe it as that, between the GENCOs and the DISCOs would affect the implementation of this new policy?
I think the policy is already out. The regulation is there. I've looked at it. It's sound. It's
not the first in a line of policies to rework and revamp the power sector that we are saying.
I think the regulators are very serious about this one. I've been in many fora where this regulation has been discussed. I think that this one is potentially a game changer, and I think even the discos, this is one of those regulations where you don't really have much in terms of backlash, either from the discos or from the customer. I think everybody can see the positive side of this regulation, right? And I think that if funding was a major issue and you have a situation where customers are allowed to pay for these meters over time, then that would reduce the pressure.
Over time would be in installmental payments?
Yes, so there's a provision for customers to pay for these meters over a 10-year period. Right, so
okay,
you can
please break that down. So you get to, I'm getting excited now if you can tell.
Sure.
You get to, as a power consumer, apply for a prepaid meter and pay some token for starters.
Yes.
And then you are to expect them to install it within 10 days based on the token that you paid earlier, and then spread payment over time?
No, so you pay for your electricity meter. So you actually pay, not a token, you pay for your energy, right? You also pay for, because if you were on an estimated system before, what would have happened was you would not have had a meter, right? Now, but you're a registered customer of that distribution network. So what is going to happen now is you will get a meter, right? And you will pay for that meter, and on the basis of the payments you made, you'll start to have more credible charges for electricity. But the idea is customers don't have the obligation to pay for those meters all at once. So if you have the financial wherewithal, you can pay for your meter upfront, but there's also the option to pay for the meter over a period of time, and it can range from anything between 1 full year to about 10 years.
And you're still to expect installation within 10 days?
Oh yes, you're supposed to. So as soon as you make the first payment, then you're supposed to have a meter.
I mean, no doubt, on paper level, on surface level, and when you explain, it does look like some exciting news that I'm sure that Nigerian power consumers will be holding onto and awaiting implementation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think very quickly we'll start to see the results. I think one of the things that I think that the regulators have done a good job of and are continuing to do, and the players in the industry as well, is to sensitize the public. I think the more the public is aware of the rules of the new participants, I think the better for everybody.
Thank you very much for your time on the show.
All right, you're welcome.
Abimbola Banjo is the Director for Power and Utilities at PWC Nigeria.